In this lesson, we're going to learn how to write data to a file in Ruby. For the purposes of this lesson, we're going to assume that we're going to always be writing to a new file. In the exercises, we'll look at how to write data to a file that already exists or append data to the file. But in this exercise, we're just going to create a new file every time. So let's get started by creating a new program. We're going to call this program writefile.rb. Our first step is to create a new file and associate it with a file object. This file object is just a name that represents the file itself because we'll be using it to call print and put s. So let's take a look. We'll call our output object or our writing object, our file object, outfile. And then to create a new file, we type file.new, the name of the file, in quotes, and then also the letter W in quotes to indicate that we're writing to this file. Once we've done that, then we're ready to actually begin writing data to the file. So let's look at a couple of ways of doing that. One way would be to use print. Another way would be to use put s. When we're finished, we should always close the file. You'll notice when we read files, we weren't particularly concerned with closing. It's just considered good practice to always close files that are being written to. I know when I started out in computing, closing files was actually necessary. The operating system didn't do it for you, and if you didn't close a file, a lot of times that file would be corrupted when you tried to open it again later. Now in most languages, closing simply allows the buffer that is created as you actually write data to the file to be flushed. So a lot of times when you print data or put s data, that file is actually placed in a buffer in memory. And then when the file is closed, then that buffer is flushed and the data is actually physically written to the file at that time. That just makes your programs more efficient. So let's test out our code right here. We'll exit and save. And we'll run our program. There was no response. I didn't tell it to write anything to the console. So then we can check. Let's see what our text files are. And there's our file, myfile.txt. So let's look at it. And there you'll see we have hello world and goodbye world put right next together because print did not include a new line. You should usually add that new line into your code to explicitly make sure that a new line is included. So let's go back and look at our program. And let's fix that. We'll put the new line in. We'll save. We'll leave it here just in case. Let's clear the screen. Run the program again. There it is. And then type our file out again. And now you see that hello world is written with a new line so that goodbye world is now on the following line. Numbers can be written to files, of course. Let's open the program again. And of course we can include arithmetic expressions. Now let's take a look. We'll save, go back to the command prompt, clear the screen, call the program, type out the file. So it looks like 1004, but of course it was 100 and then 2 times 2, which is 4. I didn't bother to put the new line in just because I didn't think it was necessary to demonstrate how numbers are written. Of course, we recognize that when numbers are written to a file, they're actually written as text. So if we want to read those back in as real numbers, we'd have to do a conversion as we read it in. We'll cover that scenario in the exercises also. So let's open the file again and just take a look at how we write data to a file. It's very simple. We open a file for writing. We're specifying it's a new file to make sure we don't accidentally overwrite data that we wanted to keep. And then when we open the file, we also specify that it's for writing with a W. Then using our file object or our file handle, we simply print data that we want to be written to the file. So strings and numbers, any data at all. I didn't go through all the different data types, but I didn't think that was necessary. And then when we're finished, we close the file. When we go back and look, we have data written to the file exactly as we specified. So that wraps up this lesson on writing data to files. Now we're going to move to another different type of I/O, and talk a little bit about network programming in Ruby.